The biggest difference between the knowledge society and industrial society is in the means of production. Now think about this. In the industrial society, the means of production, this is a car that Toyota exported to the United States for the first time in 1957. The means of production for this car was robots, machinery, automation, assembly line, right? Those were the means of production. Now, what's interesting is this car never sold in the United States. There was so much unsold inventory that branding was wrong, for one thing, right? Toyo Pet. Come on. Right? What's interesting is Shoichiro Toyota told me confidentially that he says the other problem with this car is in order to get into a U.S. highway, they had to search for a ramp that was going downhill. Because if there was a steep uphill entrance to the freeway, this car never made it up. So, but that was the means of production. Now, 3 years ago, they came up with this car, the Tundra, in the United States. Now, what was the means of production for this? Of course, yes, assembly line, yes, machinery, yes, automation, yes, robots. But this time, the American associates of Toyota said, you know what? The true truckies in the United States don't use the pickup truck just to pick up materials or load the car. They use it for recreation. They go fishing with it. They go, do all kinds of things. And in fact, the car was built on the suggestions of the American associates and with an American spec. So who were the means of production for this car in year 2005? Actually, it was the head and hand of every employee. Head is the thinking that goes into what kind of customers are going to buy this, are going to be using this. Hand is experience. Experience having worked in the U.S. environment for a long term. Now, I used to work for a consulting company called McKinsey and Company. Now, what do you think is the means of production for a consulting company like McKinsey? Do you think they use CAD/CAM to make a recommendation to their client? No. They use their head, which is the analytical part, and experience. Those are it. And that's the means of production. They come up with a recommendation. And let me tell you, the clients pay a pretty high price for just using head and hand. Head and hand actually is an easy way to understand the two different types of knowledge. We call explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge, you can see from here, everything you can put in a computer is explicit knowledge. Anything that you can digitize, words, numbers, data, formula, sound, even pictures these days, right? It has been made explicit. You can see it. And you can retrace it, right? You can send it to other people. This is explicit knowledge, the head part. What's very difficult to articulate is actually the right-hand side, which is tacit knowledge. This is the experience, the five senses. Five senses. If a child touches a stove and gets a little burn, will the child ever touch the stove even if the stove is cold? No. There was a knowledge that the child gained through the five senses, right? That's tacit. It's very difficult to articulate, but you have that. Do you get insights or hunches, intuitions? I don't know about you, but I get it when I'm taking a shower in the morning. I get an insight. But I say, ooh, but it's very difficult to express in words because it's a hunch. It's an intuition. But you know you got it, right? Aha! That's tacit knowledge. Maybe you get it by getting Thai massage, right? And you go, aha! Now, I have to keep the circle people alive, you know. So I got to make sure that you were not falling asleep. Emotions or feelings. This also is part of tacit knowledge. Let me give you an example. I roomed with a friend of mine when I visited the United States for the first time for 1 year. His name was Arden. His father used to work for the U.S. Army. So when I first went into the dormitory, he looked at me and said, enemy. But being a nice guy, he invited me to his home in Sacramento for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. His father, Arden Sr., treated me like one of his sons. And 1 year passed, and I was leaving for Japan, and both Arden Jr. and Arden Sr. came to see me off at San Francisco Airport. I still remember what Arden Jr. told me. He shook my hand and said, Hiro, I don't think there will be World War III. I can't imagine being on the battlefield fighting against you. Now that's something that feeling and emotion made him say. But that's knowledge. That's knowledge, right? We also talk about ideals, beliefs, values that you hold, right? That's in your body, inside you. But that's a very important part of knowledge. Now let me tell you, I used to teach at the Harvard Business School for 7 years. The Japanese students who came to the Harvard Business School, especially when they were an elite, meaning working for the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of International Trade and Industry, these guys did not do well at the Harvard Business School. The reason being, we have 90 people in the class, a lot of very direct interaction, right? And these guys usually are sitting on the back row, and I ask them a question, Toshi, what do you think? And Toshi's response was, difficult question. He wouldn't answer. It's not that he was dumb, but, they're not used to giving answers, especially if you're at the Ministry of Finance, right? So big problem there. Now, what's important here is to realize this is the book that Jiro Nonaka and I wrote. On the cover, you see this, which depicts the five senses. So it's very much a body thing. It's not so much the intellect here.